All right, today we're jumping into a really mind-bending idea from the source material. It's this concept that our entire reality, all the struggles, all the triumphs, might not be an accident at all, but a deliberate cosmic experiment.
So let's just dive right into the heart of it with the most provocative question this material raises. What if our world, this world of duality, of good versus evil, light versus dark, what if it wasn't some cosmic mistake? What if it was a carefully designed and fully sanctioned test?
You see, the source proposes that this system we're living in, this reality some might call the Matrix, wasn't just forced upon us. No, it was actually a conscious choice, an experiment that was agreed upon by much higher levels of consciousness, all for the purpose of exploring a totally new kind of experience. And here's the key thing to grasp. This whole thing isn't about some ancient sin or a fall from grace. Not at all. Instead, the focus is on the value of gaining all kinds of experience. Everything we label positive and negative. It was all considered valuable, useful data.
So you might be wondering, where did this all start? Well, the source material points to these incredibly powerful, creative beings, think entities like Prometheus and Baal, who started using their immense abilities for their own personal gain instead of for the collective. But instead of being punished, this created a ripple, a distortion in the fabric of reality. And that distortion, that anomaly, became the very thing to observe, the foundation for this entire complex experiment.
Okay, so why? Why would an experiment like this even be necessary? The answer, according to the source, really comes down to understanding that there are two totally different kinds of evolution happening at the same time.
On one hand, you've got vertical evolution. That's us. That's our path as beings living in the material world. Our goal is to grow, to increase our consciousness, and basically climb the ladder through different dimensions. But then, there's horizontal evolution. And this is for what the material calls the source, the ultimate creative consciousness. The source doesn't need to level up. Its evolution comes from experiencing an infinite variety of new things, of new situations, right at its own level.
And how does the source get all this new variety? Well, that's where we come in. It's through these game worlds. Our material realities, with all of our free will, our unpredictability, and yeah, even our mistakes and distortions, that's what provides the new data. We are the engine that drives not just our own vertical climb, but the source's horizontal development too. Now, an experiment on this cosmic scale, well, it's going to need a director, right? A lead architect. And the source material introduces this absolutely fascinating, incredibly complex character to fill that exact role. To run this whole thing, a single entity, described as being from level 128, was given 100% totally unrestricted authority over the entire genetic framework of this reality. I mean, think about that. He was the lead architect for the very hardware of our existence inside this grand experiment. And the scope of his work was just staggering. He wasn't just designing things from some high-up, detached place. He was hands-on. He created beings like the Titans, and he even incarnated himself into forms like Enkidu and the Minotaur, just to experience his own creations firsthand. But, and this is the most crucial part, through all of it, he never, ever lost his connection to the experiment's original purpose. He was always reporting back up the chain. And that's what makes this so interesting. He wasn't some agent of darkness. He was a neutral facilitator for the entire show. So while on one hand he might be creating monstrous forms, on the other he was also the one designing the specialized energetic bodies, or shells, that allowed these super high-level beings of light to incarnate here and fulfill their missions. He served both sides of the duality because both were part of the experiment. So where does that leave us now? What's the current status of this epic, long-running experiment? Well, according to the source material, it's served its purpose. And it's really important to understand that it's not falling apart or failing. No, it's being deliberately and systematically brought to a close. And the reason is actually pretty simple, almost pragmatic. The lessons have been learned. All the necessary data, all the required experience from this whole duality setup has been collected. The higher powers have seen everything they needed to see, and now their interest is exhausted. It's just time to move on to a new paradigm of creative development. And this conclusion isn't some chaotic collapse. It's a planned, orderly shutdown sequence. Once all the data was collected and the higher-ups shifted their focus, the old experimental scenarios were officially terminated. A new phase is beginning, and in a really fascinating twist, the chief geneticist himself, the architect of the whole experiment, is now one of the key figures helping to guide us through this very transition.
Okay, to help wrap our heads around all of this source material offers up a really powerful final analogy that makes this whole complex idea suddenly click into place.
Imagine the source, this ultimate consciousness, as a brilliant software developer. Now, this developer doesn't need to play their own game from level 1 to level up. That's just not how they grow or evolve. Instead, the developer evolves horizontally. They grow by creating a massive open-world sandbox game, that's our material world, and then they just sit back and observe how all the players interact with that world in infinite, unpredictable, and creative ways.
So from this point of view, the matrix of duality we've been talking about, that wasn't the whole game, it was just an experimental mod. You know, an expansion pack with a very unique, very challenging set of rules that was installed just to see what would happen, just to see what could be learned from it.
And now the developers have gathered all the data they could possibly need from that particular expansion pack. The experiment is officially over. So those specific servers are being decommissioned and all the players are being moved to a new, more creative, and much more open-ended game engine. And this leaves us with the ultimate takeaway, the big question for all of us. If we are truly moving away from a pre-written experimental scenario and into a reality that's governed by the laws of creative development, well then our own choices, our intentions, and our actions become the source code for whatever comes next. The old game is ending, so the question becomes, what new rules will you write?